I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
Welcome to the show. I'm Mike Kuntz, NoLimitsUSA.us. We have a really super show tonight. We're going to have 4 great guests. Before we bring them on, of course, I'll give you a quick bio, and then I'm going to let them go over that bio again for you directly. Of course, that was Peter Finch in the great Academy Award-winning show Network. And in the show, of course, he was struck by something and his life turned inside out, and he became very famous by telling the truth. And, you know, he was yelling out the same similar concerns in the film script that a lot of people are upset about today. So before we get started, I'm going to bring on Larry Maglio for a minute. We're just going to talk a little bit about what has been going on in general. So I'm going to bring Larry up. Hi, Larry. How are you?
Good, Mike. What's going on?
So before we get started with the show, I know it's going to be a terrific show. We got 4 great guests. I just wanted to touch on a couple of the current events that have been coming about, especially today. And I want to get your feelings because I know we were sharing something very similar. I know you do a lot of investigative work. You are on the board of the Republican organization in Manhattan. And we review a lot of clips and a lot of news items, even for this show, to bring on. So something that stuck out today, and I'll make it brief before we start the show, was this committee today investigating the impeachment of Joe Biden. And I think both of us had agreed that the Republicans are not really standing up, they're not stepping up, and they're not being forceful enough. And apparently the Democrats are back to their own tactics. We saw that in AOC, Jamie Raskin, and the rest that were trying to switch the narrative. And we seem to be bumbling about in that committee, not getting down to the basis of what we want to do, which is to get a formalized impeachment against Joe Biden and the Biden family for obviously enough evidence that shows that they're a political crime syndicate, essentially. So what's your opinion on that? I mean, you're sharing the same feelings I have about this, correct?
I listening to the scuttle on like shows like Bannon's show, it's like they use Trump's word, one of his favorite words, is they seem to be choking. They choke on going forward to the next level. And as a result, they make the Republicans as a group look very weak and very ineffective. And they are ineffective because they're not doing what has to be done. They promise to use the power of the purse in order to get some change in the immigration policy and other issues like, aiding Ukraine and stuff. They always say they're going to step up and use the power of the purse, and then they don't go there. They fear what the pundits and the pollsters say, that if you do this, if you shut down the government, we're going to ruin the chances for Republicans winning. I think it's the opposite way around. I know myself, I'm getting disillusioned with the Republican Party. I think I've always been somewhat disillusioned, but now I'm seeing them as so awful that it's almost more effective to say, let's try a third party, even though the chances of a third party winning are very slim to none. We're going to go down the same road again and fail, and the country's going to be at stake. I don't think we have much more time when $35 trillion debt is like, you can't get worse than that. You're not going to be able to pay the debt service. The country is going to fall apart. It's falling apart now. I'm surprised we made it this far.
So they couldn't really, in the impeachment hearing, what I picked up was is they couldn't really lay the hammer down today. They seem to be bumbling around. I mean, according to all of the reports from Chairman Comer, who's been running this, apparently behind the scenes, we see all the charts out. We see all the connections between emails. We had Bobulinski on, who was part of that whole group and had pulled away to uncover it for himself and for the American people. But again, apparently the committee that was investigating this we're not really present or doing a great job today. It didn't seem as though they were stepping up. It looked like the Democrats were starting back to their own tricks on the committee floor there, and were creating a big distraction away from the fact that they have at least 8 or 10 major invoices, emails, and the like that have been addressed to the Biden family that show millions, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars that were transferred over from the Sino Corporation, which is controlled by the CCP. So I'm hoping that they will start to improve that committee and get down to getting at least an impeachment on the House floor to see if they can get it approved.
Yeah, I mean, and in addition to that, what's happening is one of the analysts said they're hitting us with like 10 punches at one time, and we can't even like recover from the first punch. So it's like they're overwhelming us with all this nonsense. And at some point, you say, well, what's the right strategy? You punch back and you make noise and you make some noticeably demonstrable impact. You state things as strongly as you can. The country is at stake. It's not a minor thing. It's not just like we're going through the paces of another election cycle. This may be the final election cycle, from what I feel. I don't know how everybody else feels, but that's my opinion. We're in
Okay.
the throes of the end of our republic if we
Well,
don't if we don't win.
yeah, we got a great show tonight, Larry. You put it together, and we're going to get on with that tonight. We've got 4 great panelists tonight. We have Stephanie Luca, Project Civica, which is her organization's a founder, longtime Bronx resident. And so we have her on this evening. We have Edward Durfee on. Edward Durfee is the municipal chair up in Northvale. He was also a candidate for the Northvale Council, and also he was my running mate in 2001 in the 37th District in New Jersey as an assembly candidate. He's involved with the Republican Party up there. He's been an activist and a former, as he says, the Oath Keepers are no longer the Oath Keepers, but Oath Keeper, I guess forever, he was an Oath Keeper. So he was down at 1-6, so he has an interesting story if he wishes to talk a little about that as well. Sale Coulter is joining us tonight. He is a committeeman from Newark. He has a long history of being involved with supporting the veterans. His mom used to do it down in Newark, the seniors. He moved over for his education in Pennsylvania when I think Governor Ridge was still governor there and the state was being run fairly well, according to him. And then he came back to Newark. He's an activist in Newark, and he became a Republican, great supporter of Ronald Reagan. That was his mentor. We have Ralph Amato. He is from Paramus. He is born in Jersey City. He's a Jersey City guy right here in the state, and he was a one-time Democrat, and then through his association with the Ronald Reagan coming to run for president, he became a Republican. He saw the ways of the Democrats, although he refers to the Democrats of the past as the old Democrats, so it was a different type of Democrat. He also was interesting enough, he was a councilman both as 3 years as a Republican councilman and 3 years as a Democratic councilman. So he knows both sides, and he calls himself an independent. So we have a great group tonight, variety tonight, that's going to help us kind of straighten this out. The show is Americans on American Turmoil, and I guess that says it. So before we get started, I'm going to roll in. We're going to roll in 3 clips. Sit back and enjoy it. The guests will sit back and enjoy it. Everyone at home will, once we get this blasted out, and we'll take it from there once we come back. So we'll start with our first clip.
Wow, Biden's border crisis, unending and fiercely out of control. Take a look at the middle of your screen. And by the way, we're going to get Brian Kilmeade's take on all of this in a moment when he joins. Stunning exclusive new Fox video of a train packed car after car, filled with cheering people from all over the globe coming our way. This despite the Vice President Kamala Harris very early on in the administration warning people not to come. Well, they didn't listen to her, but they do know the border is open. In Eagle Pass, Texas, our Fox drone captured video of one of the largest mass illegal crossings we have ever seen there. Border Patrol sources telling Fox some 2,200 people have crossed illegally just since midnight. Also in Eagle Pass, Fox cameras capturing the moment migrant families forcing young children to crawl through razor wire to get into this country. Babies. Who does that? They were crossing illegally during a thunderstorm. Texas troopers had to cut the wire to let the little ones especially in for the safety of those children. And we have this video from San Diego.
You're free to go all anywhere you want. You're free to.
Okay, it's no problem if I go to Chicago.
Wherever you want. You're free to.
Go wherever you want. It's a free country. So you see, those aren't Republican governors pushing those people onto buses. No. They're told, go wherever you want. That was a border agent telling a man, sure, you're free. Just one of the many people from China and Pakistan dropped off on the city streets due to overcrowding at city shelters.
Welcome back. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce and other global business groups are urging President Biden to reverse his decision on pausing approvals for pending and future liquefied natural gas exports. The president did this last week. Biden announced the move Friday officially, saying we will take a hard look at the impact of LNG exports on energy costs, America's energy security, and our environment. This pause on new LNG approvals sees the climate crisis for what it is, the existential threat of our time, said President Biden. The president made his plans for American energy and fossil fuels clear while on the campaign trail. Here's what he had to say back in 2019. Remember this?
I want you to look in my eyes. I guarantee you, we're going to end fossil fuel.
And he is moving to do so. Last year, the U.S. became the world's top LNG exporter. Joining me right now is former Energy Secretary and former Texas Governor Rick Perry. Governor, good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for being here. Give us your reaction to Biden's new policy on LNG.
Well, this is wrong in so many different ways, the least of which is not that if those young people that are responding to this TikTok influencer, who obviously the president is listening to, really believe that stopping American clean-burning liquefied natural gas from coming out into the world global market, if you will, and removing older, inefficient coal-burning power plants, somehow or another, that's just absolutely 180 degrees from what they would say. But that's what the reality is. So if these young people do care about the climate, you need to be supporting American LNG going out in the market and helping address the climate. The other side of this, and this one is more of a moral issue, you're basically telling all of those people in Africa and countries that don't have any power, any source to energy, that, sorry, you're just going to live in abject poverty for the rest of your life. You're going to die an early death. So if they really care about the world, the globe, then you need to be for American energy going out into the world, replacing that. That's before we ever get into the geopolitics of what's happening here. I mean, the message to our allies in Europe in particular, who are facing Russia, who has used energy as a weapon for a substantial number of years, is stunningly short-sighted. If you're a European and you are an ally to the United States and to NATO, this message from America is, hey, you're on your own. Good luck.
Yeah. Well, look, the Wall Street Journal out with an op-ed on this. Biden and the TikTok anti-LNG crusade. Just like you said, TikTok, they write this. Press reports say Biden advisor John Podesta pushed for the pause on LNG, which tees up an outright ban after TikTokers and climate lobbyist Bill McKibben made stopping LNG exports a cause célèbre. Mr. Biden's advisors at the White House even met with a TikTok climate influencer. So these are the people making policy decisions on America's energy?
And Joe Biden said that he was going to be the adult to come into the room when he was running for election. I mean, this is, again, this is so bad in so many different ways. You're allowing young people who get on their iPhones and influence people with TikTok to make policy in this country. I mean, what's next? I mean, the idea that the President of the United States is seriously listening to young people, in particular in this world of energy policy, which in turn affects geopolitics, by folks who are more interested in how many hits and clicks they get on their Instagram or TikTok account. That is stunningly immature, for one thing. And it also sends a real message of who's really running the White House today.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul announced new efforts to fight rising crime in New York City's subway system, which is up 13%, and that's just since last year. So Hochul is deploying 1,000 state personnel from the MTA, state police, even the National Guard to help the city. Andrew Siff with NBC News New York spoke with commuters about the safety improvements.
Lately, I don't feel that safe.
Trisha Alexander said her commute hasn't felt great lately, but seeing police back on the platform helps. What does that do for your state of mind?
It makes me feel safe. Now I feel like I got to look around my back all the time.
The return of 1,000 uniformed officers to the subway began in February and seems to be working. As we've reported, subway crime spiked 45% in January when the city ended its police overtime program in the subway. The renewed NYPD surge led to a drop in February, but subway crime still up 13% this year.
When I'm on the subway system and I speak with riders, they say, Eric, nothing makes us feel safer than seeing that officer at the token booth, walking through the system, walking through the trains.
Mayor Adams said not only will the manpower continue, but bag checks will be back at major transit hubs within the week.
There's many ways that the state can even ramp up more support for protection of citizens and commuters on the subway.
Some riders say the renewed law enforcement focus should deter criminals, many of whom are repeat offenders.
It gives a person something to think about if they're even considering to do something they're not supposed to be doing.
Yet to be calculated who pays the estimated $15 million per month in police overtime. Also, amid reports of more guns in the system and more slashings, the mayor wants to fast-track technology for metal detection.
They are doing an excellent job in identifying razors, knives, scissors, other sharp objects. To me, that's a low bar. I want to be able to identify a gun.
Our thanks to Andrew Siff with NBC New York, who reported.
Okay, back to our panel. I want to bring everybody up, and we'll get Che up so we can see him, which will be good. Terrific. And we got everybody up, Steph. We got Ralph and Ed. So we're setting up the show, Americans' View on America and its Turmoil. So you saw three topics. that we already know that's been in the line item now for 3 years since the Biden administration has been placed in Washington. We have the border, which we know about. We saw massive immigration, illegal immigration coming in truckloads across the border. The clip was self-explanatory. Then we have a problem with no longer being energy independent, and Biden continuing to sell us down the tubes, down the road, by not making us, and then going outside of our country and to get energy such as oil from Venezuela, which is actually dirty oil, which has a tremendous effect on our refineries, burdensome on our refineries because the oil is basically like tar. It's like tar. And it's also lowered our ability to pay our deficit off. So we become energy dependent once again. Then crime, the three major areas, crime. And obviously the city, and we've got some New Yorkers here, that has been, the crime rate has risen. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to start off, I'm going to go around all of us here to get an opinion to start off with. I'm going to start with Ed Durfee. And to give his overview, Ed's been really working hard in the last 20, 30 years. Every liberty-minded, independent advocacy that you can imagine with the Constitution. So, Ed, what is your response to these first three rollouts?
Sound. Oh, maybe that was me. Okay, sorry about that.
Oh, okay. That's
Okay,
all right.
so I would say it's definitely a blatant attack on the sovereignty of our country. You know, our Constitution limits our government, but it's very specific in the things that it can do, or that we allow, that we authorize it to do. You know, early on, getting into a whole dissertation on the Constitution and how it was formed, but just briefly, you know, the states came together and made this pact, and they created this Constitution. You know, the states were independent before they got together, and they agreed to, as a collective country, to protect one another, and that's why they formed. That's why we formed our government, and created the Bill of Rights and gave us certain rights. But certainly, the border is you know, a country without a border is not a country. And unfortunately, we have a dumbing down of our education system, which allows a lot of people that are in positions in government to actually believe that it's okay for people to walk across the border and not consider that a crime. I mean, as if you read the federal law, if you cross the border unannounced, you're a foreign invader. And it's just that simple, and it's just well documented. Now people say, oh well, look, in the old days when people just came and they just started living here and blah blah blah, and a lot of that's true. And you know, early on, before we had Ellis Island and before we had a whole immigration system set up, those things occurred. But we're well beyond that now, and our laws have evolved, and we have law that is sound law that's been created through our government systems, you know, especially with the 10th Amendment, which gives the states the right to do anything that the government doesn't have the right to do. So certainly, you know, brings me around to Texas, you know, struggling with protecting their border and their citizens by enforcing their own sense of immigration and threatening and also arresting people. As far as the energy independence, you know, that goes without saying. I think we all know that we have no problem providing energy for ourselves, and also we were net exporters under the Trump administration. And our technology today Even if there is a spill, the cleanups are done pretty reasonably well. You know what I'm saying? It's not like the old days when when they were first drilling wells and they didn't know what to do, how to clean it up.
Yeah, the Clean Air Ed, in the last 20 years, the technology has advanced itself.
Right.
Both for clean air and for cleanup spill ups specifically, because we were starting to produce more fossil fuel, and it was a clean fossil fuel, including coal. And they improved fracking. Certainly, the technology in fracking had improved in the last 20 years to a point where it was almost perfect. So obviously, there's something else afoot, especially with the Keystone Pipeline being taken down immediately. That was a sign, losing about 14 to 17,000 jobs as well from that mission being destroyed, as well as the green movement, which they are appropriating trillions of dollars for, and the experts have said that it really is not self-sufficient. The green movement, it will not produce, first of all, the power that we need. I think it's about 4 hours a day ultimately in wind power and 6 hours a day in solar power. The rest of the hours, I guess you're going to have to get some chipmunks in the basement to run on a paddle to make the energy in the house work.
Find an underground brook to spin a generator for you.
That's right. Let me move over to Steph, because she's a New Yorker and she's a fighter. I know about her. She's terrific, Steph Luca, and she's from a tough area of the city, the Bronx. I remember the film of, Bronx Apache. It was a great film. So what is your opinion? I mean, you're involved with Civica. Civica is to get citizens involved in both the election process and their community. When you see these clips, what stands out? I mean, obviously, you had one here about the safety in the subways, and what I call, or I guess you would call, Curtis Lewa calls her crime wave Kathy Hochul for obvious reasons. But what is your opinion on what you see here? What stands out to you, Steph? Because you're a fighter.
I am a fighter. I'll continue to fight. That's what we all have in common. What the common strain is what Barack Obama said in 2009 when he became president. Elections have consequences. And when people don't come out to vote, this is what happens. In 2022, for our governor race, we had less than 50% of the population come out to vote. Why is that? They didn't like the choices. They didn't know when they had to vote. They didn't know where to go vote. They don't think that their vote counts or matters. They think the entire process is rigged. So when you talk about each of these issues that we go through in our daily lives, it comes back to who did we vote for? What policies were put in place for these people that we voted for? And then there's another common problem that we don't have enough people running for office. In New York City, our assembly and Senate candidates don't have an opposition candidate. I voted in local elections last year. Out of 10 races, there was one race where someone had an opposition candidate. One race out of 10 in the Bronx for my district. So why is that happening? Because people are shied away from taking part. They don't know the community process. They don't know the election process at the committeeman level. All of this has been taken away from us through the education system, which again is reflective of who we're voting for and who are the people stepping up to vote. And I was watching Bannon earlier, and he made a very valid point. Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, no matter who's the leader in the Democrat Party for the House, they get what they want. They stick together, they act as one, they always get what they want. Republicans don't run their party like that. It's because it's indicative of more people, more voices, more choices, more participation. But we don't win when we do that. So do we want the win or do we want the principle? But we have to find a way to merge the principle with the win. And ultimately, that's through educating people about the election process. And that's what Project Civica is focused on for this year. And getting people engaged at their local level in their communities, whether they become committeemen, poll workers, poll watchers, helping other people get out, get registered, and making sure that the elderly and anyone who needs a ride to the polls can get there on the significant election days.
Now, the mayor, Mayor Adams, following Mayor de Blasio, I feel that de Blasio completely destroyed the city.
Mm-hmm.
And Adams is just like the cherry on the cake for de Blasio, you know.
Yep, I can agree.
I was speaking with Curtis. Curtis and I he was attending the Republican convention here in Bergen County, and we went off to the side and had a good conversation. I hope to have him on this show. He's more than happy to come on. But we were talking about how we can get that mayorship back under the circumstances and the demographics. Obviously, you have a lot of interesting demographics on their sides, aside from the minority demographics. You also have an elitist crowd that seems to continue to vote Democratic on the east side and in different boroughs. And he said it's going to take a similar misery level. This is out of his own mouth. And I agreed. I voiced this myself. A misery level like they had when David Dinkins was there. And finally, Giuliani won by that hair of an amount. I think it was 60,000 votes, and finally got in. The first time he lost, I think he lost by 60,000. He won by even less the second time, but finally people have had it. Do you feel that that's the case? What Curtis is saying, echoing, is what needs to be done? That the misery level has to get to a point where people just can't, like Howard Beale said, they can't take it anymore.
Well, it is true. And in sales, that's one of our main doctrines. People will not make a move from what they're comfortable with to something new until they feel extreme pain. But there's another layer, because you have ranked choice voting in New York, which is how you got Mayor Adams instead of a Mayor Yang. Andrew Yang was much, much more popular, but he was the 11th out of 11 candidates. And I even saw the ballot. He was on the back of the ballot by himself. So how he didn't fight ballot position was amazing to me. But ranked choice voting is giving everyone 5 votes instead of 1. So how is that constitutional? It's beyond me how they even thought that they could pass that or put it into a rule. But until we fight these smaller fights that are significant by using the Constitution and stating that specifically ranked choice voting should not be allowed, we do have to fight the early voting process because it's not constitutional. There's talk in Erie County of using different machines for early election, for early voting, rather than election day voting.
Wow.
Aren't you supposed to use the same system throughout your election process?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very simply. So there's different tweaks across the state in various counties, but for New York City specifically, we need people to come out of their homes and get active, but they're afraid for many reasons. There is violence in the streets. There's more and more shelters in neighborhoods, and people are feeling intimidated by it. They're coming to community board meetings, but what are they being told? Oh, there's nothing we can do. Call us if there's an issue. Get together with your community. Get a Ring doorbell. So hopefully this year we'll start to see that transition to let's get a little bit of change and let's try something new. What have we got to lose? Donald Trump says New York is in play, and I feel like New York and New Jersey are mirrors of one another. And if New York is in play, New Jersey is in play, and we could on the East Coast change the scape of the country.
Yeah, we're having by the way, I'll just throw this in. There is a Trump rally this weekend at Norwood, New Jersey, which is not too far from New York or Rockland County, at the VFW starting at 12 o'clock. And I believe that Bernie Kerik and Andrew Giuliani will be the keynote speakers. So anyone who wants to come is welcome to come up here. It's going to be a nice event. Do you
American Legion, Mike? American Legion.
American Legion. Okay. The American Legion. So do you feel, Steph, that New York can come back? They've lost a lot of residents there that have fled New York. What is it, about 350,000, I think, that have gone?
It was over 400,000 since COVID. I do believe New York can come back. It's the greatest city in the country, in the world. You have people who come here from all over the world who love being here. You know, you walk around the city streets, it doesn't feel the same, but that's because people are just, holding their breath and hoping that nothing bad happens. It can come back with the right leadership. It can come back. Rudy Giuliani brought it back in the 90s. I remember in the 80s, everyone was so scared, the crime and all of this, but it can come back. The people have to be inspired to bring that change back. So how do we inspire everyone to, number one, be involved with their communities, number two, take part in election systems, if it's running for office, whatever it is that their role is. They have to figure that out. And we need people to be leaders. Education has done more than just dumb down society as far as not understanding the Constitution or knowing how to apply the Constitution to our daily lives. It has also taken away leadership from our young citizens. Gen Z is very different. You cannot tell Gen Z how to think, how to feel, how to act. They will help rebound New York, across the country, around the world. Gen Z will be who delivers us back from where we are.
Oh, that's great. So we're going to move to, thanks very much, Steph. We'll come back to you. We'll come back to you. Shay Coulter is from Newark, hometown guy from New Jersey. One of our cities down there that's gone through a lot of transformation in the last 30 years. The now sitting U.S. Senator Cory Booker, who used to be my neighbor when I lived up in the Northern Valley area. He was from Harrington Park and I was from Haworth, and I happened to have about 10 years on Cory, but he was close by, and so that was interesting. And then he became the mayor of Newark. And then he ascended with the idea of being senator, and he tried to also come out and run in the primaries for president sometime. So from your perspective, Jay, which is very important, you're in the heart of the city. You're in one of the major cities here on the East Coast, Newark, with a long history going back to the days of Anthony Imperiali and all the mayors of those days when there were street fights and there were riots, and I remember them specifically, the riots of Newark going way back. Give us a little idea of what your experience is, not only as an American, but as an Afro-American, and give us your idea of how you have changed yourself after you've seen this evolution in an inner city. You did go to Pennsylvania, you came back. Tell us what's going on in Newark and what you've seen over the years and change.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Shay Coulter. What I've seen in Newark, it's brought me back to my foundation of when I came to the doorstep of the party. And there were three things I learned at that point in time in 2004. So this is the 20th year I've been a Republican. That was in college. Republicans, we learned to be a strong citizen and a good patriot. You need personal responsibility. You need to understand the limited role of the federal government, and you need to believe in the unlimited God-given human potential to be great. So my mentor, who worked in Reagan's transportation department in infrastructure, he brought me to the party with those principles. So when I came back, Mike, from Pennsylvania, college Republicans and then young Republicans, Christie was running for governor and Cory Booker was the mayor at that time. So education, as I was getting involved with it in Philadelphia, I ended up just extending my Republican resume, if you will, back into my hometown of Newark to build patriots on the ground up. The same way that in the Bible it talks about disciples being made across the kingdom of God, and this restoration of faith and freedom. That was something that's right in the fabric of our Constitution. And, so when we're down here in Newark discussing border security, we want a strong border, Mike and Mr. Ralph and Miss Steph. We want a strong border, even if up to and including if we need to do a constitutional convention or a convention of the states. That one issue could possibly be that kind of leverage to bring that discussion. In reference to the national strength that the last president brought, President Trump, who was a real president, his national gas initiative, I thought that was going to continue to strengthen our national economy. And I pray that we're able to bring that back as patriots. Looking at the opportunities on the continent of Africa that we're letting China outpace us in foreign direct investment, Mike. They're putting $4 billion a year into sub-Saharan Africa. We're putting $2 billion a year.
That's right.
Whereas we could look at Africa as an opportunity, and America not lead. We have to change presidents because we're tired of leading from behind, if you will. Pivoting on to the faith and freedom, we want a safe border, and we want to make sure that patriotism is something that's restored not only from the school level. So we're having those discussions, Mike, around religious freedom, and that parents want to have more involvement in their child's education so that we can restore Black values and national American values to be community based, where there's neighborhoods and family based legislators who are passing family based policies versus globalist policies, and taking things from school curriculums that distract our students from being good citizens and learning civics to learning inappropriate material, quite frankly, Mike and Ralph. I mean, the things that are coming into our school curriculums are a clear attack on faith and freedom. That's something that's up there with oxygen in the Black community. I can speak for myself. And, but outside of our cultural differences, our fabric as Americans is why I chose to be an American First Republican now, and we can't allow for any of the corporate parties to dictate to us as patriots. We have to do what's going to preserve our country, our Constitution, and protect our women
Yeah.
and children.
Jay, let me touch on something we spoke about earlier. We discussed Reverend Lowry, who I hope to get on this show. He is an eloquent minister out of the inner cities of Chicago. He's been there all his life. He is really eloquent, well put together. And he has formed a group and a committee that is growing by leaps and bounds in the last 3 months in the inner parts of Chicago, with all the trouble that Lightfoot had put there. And now this new mayor, who seems to be almost as bad, if not worse, than Lightfoot. So they've had an influx. Yeah, they've had an influx, a huge influx of illegals. I'll call them illegals, even though Joe messed up at the at his speech and called them illegals. But he got it from the Democrats for doing that. You know, now they want to call them what's the word they use? Something less truthful than illegals. So be that as it may, the Lowry Group in Chicago has the Black community there have rallied around him, and they have formed a community for Chicago First. And they see specifically in real time that the illegals are getting housing, they're getting food, sustenance, they're getting clothing, they are also getting a stipend, and they're preparing them for jobs. And many of the jobs in that city, especially Chicago, where the Black community's been for 100 years, was built by the Black community in most cases, and they are extremely concerned that they're being replaced by the Biden administration. In other words, to drive down wages and take those jobs away from the quote unquote minorities that the Democrats have controlled for well over 100 years. So what is your opinion about that?
Well, Mike, my opinion is that you're going to see a massive pushback against that narrative there. So the Black community has always been a very national fabric built community. We're naturally nationalists from construction all the way up to this current election cycle. So what's happening in Chicago, you're going to see that entire narrative become melted, and then that will come east. We're hopeful that more folks will lean onto their traditional values, and they see that that is something not only that's a slap in the face to the Black community and the Irish community and the Italian community that's there in Chicago, that for so long, since these folks came off Ellis Island, some of them came here in all different scenarios. If you were to interview these folks, Mike, that with them going about funding that way, and for them to make the Black community the doormat to their issue, they're going to see Black patriotism in a way that they've never seen it probably since in and around the Brown versus Board discussion when Eisenhower was in power. So you're going to see a national posture from the African American community, and what you see in Chicago, I guess through Lowry, and I'd like for you to maybe invite
I'm
him
going to
on,
invite him.
you're going to see a ripple effect. You're going to see a ripple effect of that across the country because the majority of the African American community are conservative on social issues, and I see them leaning Trump in the next presidential term because we like his toughness and we feel like we needed a leader like him who could think on their feet and secure the uh, the family table for America. That's how we see Trump from the inner city.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to come over to.
So we want to encourage them. We encourage Chicago and let them know Newark encourages them, and we encourage Steph in New York.
Yeah,
we're going to win in
working
November.
as a team here, and Ed too. I'm going to go now to Ralph Amato. I'm saving the best of the rest because Ralph has had a lot of experience, much more than I have. So he was out of Jersey City. He was a Democrat over there and grew up the old school Democrat, as you know, which were real Democrats. And then he found his way to the Republican Party. He sees himself as a independent. But I'd like to get Ralph's view because of his expanse of his life experience in politics, serving both as a Democrat and a Republican, of what these rollouts that we put on, these first three issues that we put on, and how concerned he is or how concerned the country should be. Ralph?
How you doing? How is everyone tonight? Everybody's well, I hope. Yes, Mike.
Good, Ralph. Good.
I go back a long ways in Jersey City. Jersey City, as everybody knows, you have one Republican to probably 20 Democrats. And
that's right.
My history there was one of a leader in the wards and the districts. My job, along with my brother, was to organize people to vote. And you worked with a very tough group of people that demanded action on your part, and you didn't deviate from that action. The days of John V. Kennedy, days of Dr. Paul Jordan, the days of Tom Gangemi, these were tough people that demanded action. Okay, when you talk about John V. Kennedy, he controlled the county, and that was the way it was. I ran as an independent Democrat at one point against the organization back in the early 60s and won by one vote. And I was the only elected Democrat in the county to win as an independent. And they completely blackballed me, but I hung in there for the district that I won in, which was a changing district in Greenville. But I must tell you that my Jersey City wars were not pleasant because you were pretty much asked to do the bidding for the party. I'm not easily led that way.
I can see that.
I buck things, and they didn't like that. In fact, I was threatened by Tom Gangemi Jr. that he should hit me over the head with a 2x4.
Wow!
Because I went my own way, but that's the way I am. Eventually, I married and moved to Paramus, New Jersey.
Well, that's like paradise.
Oh, absolutely. It really is. And I changed my party affiliation to Republican when Ronald Reagan ran for the presidency. Ronald Reagan, as we all know, was a diehard Democrat many years of his life, and his philosophy was the Democrats left me. I didn't leave them. That's the way I believed things happened with me. They left me, and the older I get, and the more experience I deal with on a daily day-to-day basis, that's exactly what's going on right now. I don't recognize the Democratic Party anymore, but I did become a Republican, and I ran as a Republican for council and won, served 3 years. And I had a problem with the local Republicans here because I believed that they were very, very controlling too. And once again, I'm not the kind of a person to be controlled. So I affiliated myself with a young Democratic mayor here who was a conservative thinker economically and socially in Mayor LaBarbiera. I don't know if you ever heard of him. But Rich and I got along very well. We had similar beliefs, similar backgrounds, although he was young enough to be my son. So I became a Democrat because he asked me to run 2 years later as a Democrat. That's my Democratic affiliation with the party here in Bergen County. But they're no different in terms of control here in Bergen County. In Bergen County, you have almost 1 million people living in this county, the largest county in the state of New Jersey. It's over 900,000.
Yes.
And it's a very diverse county, over 50, 60 municipalities. Maybe it's up to 70 municipalities.
It's 70, yes.
Yeah, okay. But the Democrats are tough here in Bergen, but I cannot state with you at this time that they are as tough as those I grew up with in Hudson County, Jersey City. I have to go back to Biden and, of course, Donald Trump. Donald Trump, being a former Democrat himself, is again another one of my idols because I believe that his philosophy is very similar to that of mine and Ronald Reagan's. When Biden decided to run for president, he adopted a 110-page wish list, and it was written by Bernie Sanders and the Democratic Party. Okay, and they were progressive goals. In fact, Sanders was so happy that Biden allowed this to happen because this was a very progressive list. As a matter of fact, I would call it probably a communistic blueprint for the future. This list dealt with everything from education to criminal justice. Just to be specific, they concentrate on education, the economy, healthcare, climate, immigration, criminal justice. A very, very thorough list of things that they wanted changed to and move toward a very progressive platform that I would call socialistic, if not communistic. Now, I'm a student of when I studied political science, became I got a master's in that area, and I studied the Soviet system. And it's really, really, when you look at Bernie Sanders, you're looking at the Soviet system. He truly is a communist and a Marxist.
He's an old red. He's an old red.
Right. Yeah. He accomplished his goals with Biden. Biden is just really doing what he's told. I believe he's doing what he's told.
So you think, Ralph, that was the payoff during the election for Bernie to step aside?
Well, Bernie could never win an election. We know that.
Right.
He could never win an election.
But they had to give him something so he could bring his people over, I'm assuming.
Exactly.
They made a deal.
There was a deal worked out, but Bernie was smart enough to bow out because he knew that he could never get the American people to vote for him because of his leanings toward the communism. And that's why they chose Biden as the candidate. We saw the same thing with Hillary. Okay. He realized when he ran against Hillary in the primaries that he couldn't win a national election. But he was gung-ho, and he took his shot and naturally backed away and allowed Hillary to run against Trump. Thank God that Trump won. Thank God. But under Biden right now, They would like to see the Constitution go out the window. They
Shredded.
want to take away our Bill of Rights, our First Amendment rights. They want gone. They want to do away with the electoral college. Why? Because they would love to have the big cities and the eastern and western controlled states to control national elections. There would be no competition if that happened. Okay, the electoral college protects smaller states, allows them to compete for political power around the country.
Exactly.
They would like nothing more than to do away with that. Okay. If you're looking at California, and you're looking at the West Coast, that's an area where big cities have grown and the Democrats have taken control of. You look at the East, you'll see that in New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts. You'll see it in just about every major state on the East Coast. You put the two of them together, they would control every national election if you did not have an electoral college. Now, what does this all spell out to? Total control and power. They want power. Now, we have to go back to some of the issues that you started with, Mike. We talked about. Well, let me start off by telling you a philosophy that I have with regards to the Democrats first. The Democrats believe in action first, and then we'll think about what happens later on if we need to. But the Republicans don't function that way. They think first and hopefully act later. In many cases, not acting at all.
Right.
That looks upon that to me shows a weakness in their philosophy. Shows a weakness in the market of ideas. So I don't have much. I think that the Republican Party is a weak organization right now. Thank God for Trump, who is probably maligned by many of the old-time middle Republicans. He's being maligned right now because of many of the interim old Republicans who would like nothing best but to have him defeated. In fact, they've gathered together to defeat Donald Trump in 2020. So, if we look at migration, everything that Trump established in his 4-year term of office, Biden reversed. I would assume that he reversed because he hates the man. I believe it's a personality thing. He hates Trump, and so therefore he reversed every one of his policies, all 94 of them. I believe there were 94 of them that were reversed in terms of executive actions. And we look at migration. Sure, we can't exist as a country without borders. I believe that. Ed, I think you stated that earlier. We cannot exist without a border. Trump has indicated this, and why would the Democrats then want to allow open borders? I have a couple of theories about that. They are looking for future voters. They are looking for future voters, hoping that they could have a full installment of power for as long as they could. Okay, with these newly arriving migrants or illegals, they believe. I think that they believe that they will become Democratic voters and they will be a source of power for them for the future.
Right.
Right. We have over 10.5 million of them that have come over the border now.
Maybe more.
Maybe more. Trump's calling for probably 25 million.
Yes.
Yeah. And you know what? That's the size of some of the smaller states that we have.
Some of the smallest countries.
Yes, some of the smallest countries even. So to me, that's their pathway. They want these new voters to maintain control over the issues and the strappings of government.
Right.
With regards to climate, now, Biden has indicated that climate is the most existential threat to the United States. Now, you've all heard him say that. He's an existential threat to the United States with his beliefs. He's really making China a very, very powerful nation because of his energy policies and his solar energy policies. I don't understand why he is so bent on climate change and so bent on solar power and solar energy powered automobiles, when in fact he knows that many of these, well, I don't know if he knows, I would hope that he does, knows that many of these items come out of China. Many of the minerals that are used to make these batteries and so forth, they're coming right from China. And from what I understand, that China right now is in the process of building factories in Mexico to build
That's
cars.
right. That's correct.
Right. And I just don't know why the Democrats are doing this, other than to overthrow and control the United States as we know it.
Okay, can I ask two questions, Ralph? Because you're a very experienced person. That's why I'm going to have you back on this platform. Because from the time I heard you give your speech at that last Trump rally, the signature rally here in Paramus, I could tell how you had a grasp through your experience in life and through your political experience on ideas and concepts and solutions as well. Do you feel that, other than this is a Democrat Party power play of transforming the country in the way that Obama had originally planned, then I believe that, some people believe that Joe is not competent. That's true at some level, but at another level, I believe that he knows exactly what he's doing, and he is the perfect Manchurian candidate because of his past, because he has been basically a flim-flam guy since 1972. This is part of his, despite the fact he's a bit older, he's a flim-flam guy, and he can fit that into his resume of being slightly demented. That's my opinion, number one. But the question I have for you is, do you think it's much bigger? I believe, and I want to ask you, do you believe that it's a globalist movement? In other words, we're getting hit by dark forces, that the United States is now the last place that the globalists need to take over. They can handle the rest of the world, and they can work with Xi, they can work with Putin necessarily, they can work with Kim, they can work with the mullahs, but the United States is their last goal. They have to overcome the U.S.
This is the talk of college professors and people in the universities. I don't believe necessarily that this is what they think, but it's never going to happen in reality. Okay. In terms of Biden, I believe that Biden has deficits, but you're right. I believe that he knows exactly what's going on. He's been around 50 years in government.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
As a matter of fact, he became a U.S. senator when he was a councilman in Delaware. Okay. Not the brightest guy in the world, not the brightest bulb, but he knows pretty much what's going on, I think. And he's about my age. He's 81. Okay.
Right.
I don't think he's that demented, other than the fact that he is a pawn that's being used by people like Sanders and the Democrats, because they know or knew that he was able to muster up the votes to win the election in 2020, with the help, of course, of some Hudson County stealing that went on.
Of course, a lot of stealing. I wrote an article, 28-page article on that. The
Absolutely.
theft.
I believe that the election was stolen, and I believe
too.
that
I
the
know.
governor's race in New Jersey was stolen as well.
Mhm.
Okay, I really have that belief. 85,000 votes. can be stacked in my my van. Okay, it doesn't take much room to stack 85,000 votes in maybe 25, 30 large boxes, and then take them to a furnace and burn them. Now, I can say very quickly for New Jersey that in the large cities, they count the votes first. I know this happened in Newark. I know it happens in Jersey City. I know it happened in Patterson and so on around the state. But in that election in 81 in 2000, 2021, they counted their votes last, these big cities. Now, Mike, you tell me why that happened. I believe that they wanted to know how many votes they needed to put this guy over the top. That's what I think. That's my theory.
Isn't that a duplicate of what happened in 2020, that the machines in the major swing states all shut down at 2:00 in the morning because they were, first of all, overwhelmed by nearly receiving 75 million votes. They never thought about that. He received, I think, 13 more million than his first run, which was 13% on an average of any incumbent in American history. So
yeah, he got over 75 million votes in the Trump did.
Yes.
And he still lost the election. And
But
he was told.
They shut the machines down because I believe they were looking at how many votes were coming in and how many votes they would need to steal the election. The same thing you're talking about here in New Jersey.
I think they did that in Georgia. I think they did that in Michigan. So as a matter of fact, in Michigan, they covered over windows. So so people could not see what was going on in the election place. Okay, I know I was an election observer for many years, and I was right there at the table watching these people come in to vote, and I would challenge voters. That wasn't allowed at all during the presidential election, nor is it allowed lately in the state of New Jersey. If you go to Hudson County, and Shay, I don't know what's going on in Essex right now, but I know in Hudson County,
Dominion voting systems. Everything you're saying, Ralph, is exactly what it is. I'd rather listen to you. I'm a student in your class right now. Yes, they went to Dominion voting systems, and Mike, everything that he said, that the Democrat party here, which has affected our quality of life, they've done patterns and practices in alignment with what Ralph just referenced. I'm going back.
Just make a note. I'll make a note that once Fox paid the judgment to Dominion, okay, we Bergen County brought back the Dominion machine. They had gone to another machine which was much more comprehensive, simpler to use, the tabulations and the voting process. Suddenly, Dominion appeared on the scenes because I'm part of that group down there, and we saw them. I got 3 calls that night based on the organization that we have, and they said, Mike, what's happening here? The lines are out the door. These are just municipalities. We're talking about Dumont, Bergenfield, Emerson, places like that. They're all Dominion machines. And people were saying, I don't believe my vote was counted correctly. I said, first of all, when I went into the machine, I had to punch in my votes, technically, and then I got a card for my votes, and I had to put it back in the machine, register a hard copy below the machine, take it out of the booth, and walk it across the room to a tabulator where I put it in. He said, how do I know this thing? No one knows who I voted for with all these.
Is that the Excel machine? I think that's what they're buying in Erie County.
Yeah.
You have 2 things happening. You have the smaller precinct counts are not happening anymore. So all of the election apparatus is being collected and brought to a central counting location so that they can control the counting for the local precincts. The precincts don't call it up anymore to the state the way it used to. So now what they're doing with these machines, The machine itself is just a machine, which each part of the machine, look at where the material is created. It's either Taiwan or China, somewhere across the world. And each machine part, I've been on spaces for Twitter. You have so many people who are so well versed in this. They say that the machine itself has parts where there's actual spyware that is built into it, and then whoever is putting it together would need to know how to turn off that spyware. So you have the mechanisms of those machines, and then you have the software. So you have the machines, the software in the machine. So they create UPC codes on a lot of these new voting tabulations. So the UPC code is what's being read, not necessarily a vote. You don't know if the UPC code is actually correlating to what you're voting for.
Well, the tabulation vote counting is done out of country, though. Am I correct?
That I don't know. I know that some people suppose that that's happening. It's supposed to be happening at the central counting locations across the states. If it's going out of the country, I don't physically have evidence. I haven't seen anyone bring that. There are people that talk about that, but the machine at every level, the best system for us across the country for every state is hand count paper ballots one day.
And
So
identification
a lot of people are fighting
cards.
for. I'm sorry?
Being able to prove
absolutely.
who you are. Right.
Which by the way, the African American community across the country, 76% have been polled to want those cards because they feel more comfortable with an extra ID and providing that ID so they're assured that their vote is not compromised.
That's right.
That's the reason.
When you have the Democratic Party that does not agree with having an ID, you know why they don't want IDs. They want to steal votes. Okay, this is what they want. They don't want you to have an ID when you go to vote. Okay, I recall there was a time when I was voting here in Paramus that you had an ID card that was given to you by the county. They gave you a card to identify who you were.
County ID.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I want to tell you, folks, I have to tell you one more thing about some of the Republicans that I know in Bergen. Nice, wonderful people, nice people, but some of them are working for the county and are very close with what's going on in the elections bureau, and they know what's going on. They're friends, but they don't want to talk about it, and that's disturbing to me. Even though they're friends.
Well, you have three departments: Board of Elections, Superintendent of Elections, then you have the county clerk, and all of them interact.
You're right. I'm not talking about the current county clerk. I'm talking about the other two departments.
Right. Board of Elections and Supervisor of Elections. Yeah.
Right. I'm very disappointed that they just go with the crowd, go along with what the Democrats want, and it's very disturbing to me. I don't really believe in a diehard Democrat organization or a diehard Republican organization. I don't believe either party should be dominant, but I do believe that you should have a say in what your position is with regards to issues that affect your life. And this is where I'm coming from. Mike, you know what I'm talking about.
I do, absolutely, absolutely. Listen, we're going to have 3 more roll-ins, and then I want to come back to you because I have a very important question about education, and you were a teacher for 32 years. So let's bring in the roll-ins. We're going to start in with the next 3 roll-ins, and that'll kind of break the show up, but we'll bring in some other issues that have been shown to us over the last 3 years, including the riots in Minnesota back in 2020.
PD body cam video takes us inside that Times Square brawl that made national headlines. That and new surveillance video police released raising more questions tonight whether the January altercation should have happened at all.
From what I'm looking at, it didn't have to go this far.
Defense attorney Neville Mitchell weighing in on the videos showing the two officers approach the group of men.
Vamos, what's core one?
The crowd is giving direction to please disperse, that they're blocking the sidewalk.
But Mitchell says the video doesn't support that, as people are seen walking by. Most of the group immediately moves, but Yohenry Brito in yellow is the last to leave, telling police, "Don't touch me."
Yellow Jacket takes his phones.
Terry Monahan, former NYPD chief of department and News 4 contributor, says Brito was non-compliant. But when he starts to finally obey the officer's orders, pushing the stroller away, the group begins singing a derogatory song. And then this. Immediately after Brito yells, "Looks like ugly Betty" to the group, the officer is shown pushing him up against a wall.
And Lieutenant makes a decision that he's going to summons him for disorderly conduct.
But Mitchell and others say the officer acted aggressively.
Words shouldn't be enough for police to act the way they act. You would want to make sure we should have in the city police officers that are able to de-escalate situations.
And Mitchell says the videos show police did the opposite. When Brito protests and tries to break loose, the tussle begins, and at least 7 members of the group jump in, kicking and pulling at the officers trying to arrest him.
This was a despicable act. It was not only an attack on the individuals who wore the police uniform, but it was an attack on our symbol of justice.
The Manhattan DA, along with the mayor, announcing the indictment of 7 people involved in the brawl, 2 of them not yet named. They're charged with assault, kicking officers, kicking away a police radio, and even aiding Brito's escape, though he was eventually captured. DA Bragg initially blasted for not immediately requesting most of the group be held on bail, saying today he wanted to make sure the right people were charged. But critics aren't convinced he made the right call.
A lot of scary things going on in the subway right now.
Commuters feeling anxiety after a new flurry of violent incidents in the subway system. And so today, uniformed National Guard members, part of the entourage, entering the MTA's Rail Control Center with Governor Kathy Hochul.
These brazen, heinous attacks on our subway system will not be tolerated.
Hochul deploying 750 Guard troops, along with 250 state troopers and MTA police. They'll be supplementing what the NYPD is already doing, checking bags at some of the MTA's busiest subway stations.
For people who are thinking about bringing a gun or knife on the subway, at least this creates a deterrent effect.
What the state will not do is pay the estimated $15 million per month in NYPD overtime the city is spending. Mayor Eric Adams asked the governor for that money. Her answer?
The mayor has many requests before us in our state legislature. Many, many requests. And I'm glad to see that their surpluses are looking, or their finances are looking better than they had been.
Hochul also said Mayor Adams didn't join her at the podium today because of a schedule conflict. The mayor instead appearing on 4 different TV stations, bringing a poster to highlight his focus on repeat offenders, the same criminals over and over in the subway system.
We don't have a surge in crime. We have a surge in recidivism.
Some commuters today skeptical bag checks can make a dent.
There are just too many people. I don't know how many bags they can really go through.
But transit officials are also adding cameras in the conductor cabin of trains, 1 week after a conductor in the Rockaways was slashed. The MTA chairman on today's overall security response.
I think these initiatives are going to make the system actually safer and feel safer.
Then the doors burst open. The king and queen walk through. There's our precious daughter. If they did not know what love meant, who would?
And a big bad puppy.
Drag Queen Story Hour is really just people reading books to kids. There's no underlying mission. It is nothing more than having someone come in, read books to children, and make them feel welcome and included.
Remember learning how to walk? I remember learning how to walk, but it was with these shoes on. Friends the News.
It turns out I'm not a narwhal. Of course you are.
And I never had specifically, like for myself, like a role model or someone to look up to at an early age to say it was okay to be gay, to be a drag queen, to be, whatever I wanted to be. So that's why I think it's important to be here today, to show the kids that, there is someone that you can look up to and you can be who you want to be.
I think it's just important that he sees this as something that's normal, it's accepted, it's not anything to be ashamed of. And if I just keep taking him to events like this, it's just going to be a part of life.
Everybody say love.
Love.
Yay.
Love.
Hands up, don't shoot! Hands up!
The 3rd Precinct of the Minneapolis Police Department, on fire. Nearby businesses ablaze. This is how the night of May 28th unfolded. George Floyd's arrest and death in police custody on Monday set off protests in the Twin Cities. The protesters are demanding that criminal charges be brought against the officers involved.
Put that fist up! Yeah! We all here! All lives matter!
When that didn't happen on Thursday, some demonstrators escalated their tactics, while others tried to keep the peace.
Stop going, stop!
The situation remains unchanged outside of the 3rd Precinct. Just a group out there engaged in peaceful activity.
Police scanner audio and footage from outside the precinct provide insight into what happened.
9901, 9901 emergency. We got individuals breaching the gate at the 3rd Precinct. We also got people trying to breach the front doors.
The police shoot tear gas from grenade launchers.
You want more of your people to die? You cowards! You want more of the people you're supposed to protect to die? You cowards! You!
This back and forth with protesters continues for about an hour.
They're about to breach the back gate. They're taking heavy rocks.
Heavy rocks. Please air the route that everyone should take.
Southbound. We're going southbound.
Copy. Evacuation route is southbound.
Around 10 p.m., the officers begin evacuating the precinct.
Everybody get garbage! Let's fill the pump station with garbage! Burn it!
Airing information citywide. The 3rd Precinct has been compromised.
3rd Precinct is up in flames.
On Friday, one former officer was charged with murder and manslaughter in connection with George Floyd's death.
Okay, we're back in the studio, and we'll bring everyone up, everyone including, I think, Che. See if we can get him up here. And there he is. I'm hoping everyone was able to see the clips. So we started with the infamous beating up of those police officers at Times Square, where apparently they were trying to get the illegals to disperse. And they took exception, I guess, to one of them that was giving them trouble, who they decided to either arrest or handcuff. And that's when the altercation broke out, and the cops were pummeled by at least 10 or 12 illegals, beat up, and it was not a good scene at all. And then we also had I think it was Governor Hochul came to town, and that was the concern about crime, and that she was going to get National Guard into New York to be in the subways to assure riders that they would be safer. Whether that's happened or not, we will see. That was more recent, I think, in the last month. And the third one I want to touch on also, which is basically having drag queens, which we've seen now in the last 3 years in our libraries, our school institutions, at festivals. And of course, I'm going to refer that to Ralph before I get to the last scene, which of course was George Floyd riots in Minnesota, where the city was destroyed, turned upside down. Burger Kings, McDonald's were burnt down. People could not go shopping, go to their homes. Electricity was turned out. Cops were pummeled with rocks and frozen bottles of water. And not only that, they seized the third precincts, burnt it up. In other words, the cops were told to evacuate, essentially not protect the third precinct. So this is another series of different events that have unfolded that have shown all these events have come since 2021, January 15, when Joe Biden put his hand on the Bible. So I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to start with Ralph first. And I want you to make a comment about what you saw with the violence. We did have a little technical difficulty with that last scene, but it came back. And also, I want you to comment on, you're an educator, 32 years. What has happened to the education system, the woke, the CRT, the involvement with social transgendering initiatives, in addition?
32 years is a long time to teach in the public schools. I'm retired now 23 years. I can't tell you what, I have no idea what it's like today teaching in the classroom. But I can tell you when I was teaching, we were required to meet with parents. We established conferences with parents on a marking period basis. And that was our job, that was our requirement. And we were encouraged to call parents and work with them in any disciplinary situations that occurred between the teacher and the student. This is what happened while I was teaching. We had no problem doing that. As a matter of fact, it was very difficult back then because the parents had too much to say. But that's the way it was. We were required to meet with them. We met with them, and we had to work with parents. Not true today. Not true today, because not only with the CRT critical race theory business, but you also have a situation with a couple of laws that were passed by the so-called communist regimes, the Parental and Public Schools Parents' Bill of Rights Act that was passed by Congress just recently. That's now languishing in the Senate. That act would have helped parents with the right to know what's going on in the schools. The reverse has happened. When I was teaching, we had to communicate with parents. Now, the school boards and the boards of education and the educational hierarchy don't want you speaking to parents with regards to what's happening with their kids. That bill, the Parents' Bill of Rights Act, would have required public schools to speak with parents on a basis that parents needed, and also to look and peruse reading materials. Right to be heard. You go to a board meeting. I was on a board of education in Paramus back in the 80s. Okay, and parents had a right to be heard. Now, going to Board of Education meetings, they don't want you to speak. As a matter of fact, around the country, they're arresting you and throwing you out of school board meetings. They're threatening you with dismissal or arrest if you open your mouth with regards to school policies. We always had a right to see what the budget and spending was like when I was teaching. Not true now. They pretty much want that done without any parental guidance. these are things that are going on right now, and the Biden administration would like to have parents not involved at all with what's going on with their children in the public schools, and the unions are right there with them. And Mike, I got to tell you guys, I was a member and an organizer for the NJEA for many years back in the late '70s, and they are they right now they're a cancer with the NEA and the AFT. They control what's going on in politics, and they control the Biden administration. So they don't want parents to know what's going on with their kids. With regards to another bill that was passed, the Protection of the Women and Girls Sports Act. That's another area that they don't want you involved in. They want to protect people that are that have a gender change to allow them to compete with women in sports. This is not a good thing in my opinion. This is a terrible thing. What's going on? Mike, you have a question for me with regards to the public schools. What was it?
Yes. Yeah. No, the question I had was related to what I had just asked about the curriculum, the fact that they're putting CRT into the school system.
Okay. Right. CRT is definitely a situation that's occurring probably in the state. Well, New Jersey State is not only the state in the United States that must now allow critical race theory to enter the curriculum. That's required by law now in New Jersey, and probably just about every woke state that we could think of. We all know what critical race theory is, I hope. It's a belief that everything is shaded and clouded by race and white dominated society. That the white dominated society and race determines what is happening, and is actually discriminating against people of minorities and blacks. Okay, this is what critical race theory is, and everything is hinged. Everything with those beliefs enter what we believe with regards to everything that's taught in the schools. It's really a situation where they'd love to see the Constitution, the economy, law, and culture totally changed under this so-called CRT, or criminal race theory, which is based on racism and white domination.
I want to go to Ed for a minute. Ed, we had a campaign platform that referred to this in 2021 when we ran a Senate race and 2 assembly races. That was our team in the 37th district. What do you see in the community schools and some of the pushback that you've seen, especially in your town? I know you've elected some new members to the Board of Education, and one of our colleagues, Joe Kuhns, has done very well in electing and flipping some of the Board of Educations in the Indian Hills section further north. That would be in Wyckoff, Franklin Lakes, and Oakland. They were actually able to flip and get a majority. So what do you see? Are you seeing the pushback on this, Ed?
Well, what I'm seeing is that, we're part of a regional school district up here in Northern Valley, and we were able to elect 2 new people 2 years ago, Michelle and Donna. And they were our first 2 conservative members of the school board. And since that time, we've gotten another school board member on from Northville. Because the way it works, there's 7 towns that are in the district, and each town gets 1 or 2 based on their size. So right now, there's the school boards is overweighted with the old way of running the business of just doing whatever the superintendent wants to do. Being behooving to the New Jersey State School Board. And unfortunately, and I think my feeling on it is that people are more aware of it. I know in our local school, in our local school district for the K to 8, they get these mandates from the state, and they're not real quick to put it into the curriculum, gratefully. But it's glad to hear that Ralph was on the school board as well. Yeah, I'm considering running for school board here locally in Northvale, only because I have 3 grandchildren that are coming into the system, and I certainly don't want to see them being taught by transgenders, or being taught transgenderism, or being taught these sexual games that they're showing with all these books. And there's numerous books and stuff that they're trying to incorporate into the curriculum. CRT is really just another way of white shaming people. Like Ralph had said, it's teaching the children that they're because they're white, they have an advantage. And there's some misunderstanding, I think. I mean, I can speak for myself. Personally, I don't think I ever got any advantages in school, but maybe I didn't feel disadvantaged because of my color or my race. But I can say today that it's being reversed. I mean, now if you're a white male, you're castrated. You can't say anything today, because oh no, what do you know? You don't know anything. But the reality of it is that we're all people in this world, and and God made us all, men and women, and they're trying to they're trying to take that communist rule and make everybody wards of the state, and redefine sexuality, redefine education, and really pervert our society. And it's up to us. And I know most of us all think the same way here on this call, that we're not going to allow that to happen. As an oath keeper, we had a motto that was not on our watch, and that's truly what it is. I took the sacred oath when I joined the Marine Corps, and that oath does not expire. And if anybody that's been elected, Ralph himself took an oath that was similar to that, the oath to the Constitution, and it's a sacred oath. It's similar, but it's maybe it's watered down. I don't know. I don't think so. When you swear to uphold the rights of the Constitution, it's in your heart. It's not something that you just allow it to go away.
Right. Well, we had an issue here recently in New Jersey, which got a tremendous amount of blowback, and that was policy 5657, as you recall. Now, a judge has allowed that each municipality can make a decision based upon their own Board of Education to vote as to whether they want to enforce that, and that was. The policy was not a law. It was actually brought about through the Civil Rights Division. This is how they played their game. The Civil Rights Division in New Jersey had a policy 5657, which said that no minority in the schools could be treated differently than any other group. And so what they did was, for transgendering socializing information, they decided that they felt that these people were being treated differently in the schools, and it was for the schools to identify that and then implement their own forms of communications with that student and advice without the parents knowing, without parental rights. But that did not come out of a law. It came out of policy. So when the school systems, a group of the school systems in South Syria said, we're not going to do this. We want parental rights in our school systems. We're not going to allow you to tell our kids that a kid named Brian can suddenly be called Ellen in school and we don't know about it. So what happened was there was tremendous blowback. They were sued, and basically the judge said, no, you can't do that. So now each municipality, each Board of Education can make a decision whether they want to implement 56, 57, which is great because most of them did not want to do that. And that also gives the residents of that town a choice, if they have that type of Board of Education, to remove them in the next election cycle. So it is working on that level. And they used policy. They used the Civil Rights Division to enforce this policy in the school systems so that a group of individuals were not different from others. And that's how they play their game. Che, in Newark, what's going on in the school systems in Newark? How is there any blowback in those school systems? Are they running in such a way where the kids don't feel any pressure from the boards of education or the school system themselves? And is that being reported back to the parents? Do you get any feedback about that?
Parents right now are pushing back against the 57, 50, 56, 57. That is a blatant violation of their religious rights. A lot of the parents want to have that discussion at home. One of the problems, Mike, that comes out of the LBJ Great Society legislation, when they did the civil rights legislation as the Republicans crafted it at that time, or to take Ralph's advice of not leaning toward one party, let's deal with patriotism. It was not supposed to include sexual orientation in the 60s when they designed it. They said if they brought sex in, it was going to have problems with it later on. And we see that now because they can't even identify the original focused population from post-Reconstruction. I call it the 45, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. And they've made that a foul. So myself and other parents who love our country, regardless of our color or our background, we want to get back to that, to what the country was trying to do at the end of slavery, Reconstruction, and then the Democrats brought in those black codes. So that's where that's what I don't even want to say all of the Democrats, but those Dixiecrats in the South really had their hand more in the mix than is kind of brought forth in the classrooms. And we're just getting black parents, or I don't even call them black parents, inner city parents, to see that our national fabric is bigger than any form of hate. Our national love is bigger than the hate that we see on the media, Mike. And we're fighting back against it with love. And what Steph is doing, we're going door to door. We're empowering people with information, and we're staying armed with good patriotic information so that we can educate our fellow citizens right on the ground, right in the trenches, as Edward referenced. Thank you for your service. We're educating those citizens, Mike, right on the sidewalk, if you will. The environment that Stephanie and I are organizing around and training up patriots, this happens, Mike, at George Washington speed. You find a citizen that wants to know more about our country, and we empower them right on the spot. There's no hold up, and we want them to take that message to another citizen, and then we have multiple citizens waking up in these neighborhoods.
Yes.
Co-op City. We'll have a ripple from Co-op City all the way down to Harlem, where my family's from. But Mike and Ralph, we're seeing we're seeing schools go from becoming civic centers, training citizens, to becoming now, Mike, indoctrination centers, where we're seeing dads have to sue on behalf of their daughters because women should be they should be a protected class, and these dads have had to sue with around this transgender issue, and we don't want to treat any human being wrong. I've had to advocate for transgender inside when I worked in the court system, Ralph, in Philadelphia, and the alpha male students on the in the lockup facilities. It was a completely therapeutic non-lockup facility. They welcome those transgender males, and once I saw them beginning to play cards with the other gentlemen who were the alpha males on these units, they said, Mr. Coulter, don't even worry about it. We're treating them like members of our community. So there's a way to do it. But Mike, those discussions for America's boys and girls should be left to the parents at home. It's
Just
in
one.
complete federal overreach,
Yeah.
and in this instance, it's tyrannical state policy that is we're gonna have to take it into the courts, and that's where we're going with it. What we've been doing, Mike, is unveiling the lie that the clergies have been completely left in the dark. The rabbis, these Muslim imams, and these pastors, they've gotten a few. The far left have now taken over and try to attack our faith and freedom and get political clergy persons to speak as if they are sounding a trumpet. But we we believe in God's law and not man's law. So that's where we are. We're tipping the scales of that conversation to be focused on common sense. And Mike, on March 28th, we have a pastor that's coming to the Newark Board of Education, and when he does like religious liberty stuff with curriculum change, I'll make
Oh,
sure
great.
we send that over to you and
We'll
Ralph and
send that
Steph.
out, and we'll get it out. Larry will take that, and we'll get it out on our internet magazine.
But that's what's happening, Mike. Parents are pushing back against the indoctrination, and they are getting their children to focus on the fact that we have we're a great country together. What DeSantis was trying to do in Florida, I think his messaging was a bit off, but CRT is not Black history. It's not American history. It's it's parents, inner city parents have asked the state of New Jersey for a 21st century education. We want to partner and make a 21st century education. The state of New Jersey has told us they want to give our children a sexualized 21st century education.
Right.
So we've pulled Raz Baraka into the room and told him, you got to tell Murphy this isn't what we asked for. There's the I've seen Democrats with buyer's remorse, if you will. And elections have consequences, as Steph said, and we are going to look at every civic process to be civil and to address these matters, Michael, in the correct venue. That's where parents are.
Okay, how does Rouse feel about your comments with regards to this issue?
Well, he has completely hidden behind the Democrat local. He kind of like insulates himself around a messaging that there's PR about other things to distract away from Steph, our religious freedom, and our most important areas of our first 10 amendments. So he's deviated so far away from the Constitution, Ralph. You know, his dad was very socialist.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm not socialist. I believe in free markets and rights and God-given rights and natural rights. He, I think, now is having a civic learning lesson, because with 75 million voting for Trump to govern in a municipality that's like Newark and its its proximity to New York, you have to have markets that work. And the socialism thing, I told the mayor's brother, you can't show me one area, you can't show me one example in the last 500 years that socialism has worked for Black people. But I try to pose that to several cultures, but I'm talking about for inner city. That's where I challenge him at, Ralph, that socialism is not good down here, and we want to train up a generation of leaders in one generation. We don't want we want folks to be able to have a fruitful lifestyle where they can live into their 70s and 80s and have a fruitful lifestyle versus their current lifestyle where their their death style versus their lifestyle is inconvenient. Kids are losing their lives at 25 that are not coming through a good education system. And Steph could tell you the statistics, but we want them to value their lifestyle over their death style, and that to be something that can happen, and they contribute to the American dream, Ralph, instead of them squandering it before the age of 25.
CRT is not the answer either, and everybody understands that, you know.
It's not the answer.
No.
And President Trump actually made the effort of putting Black history, American history, back into the classroom, which is why I think we saw some pushback on DeSantis. DeSantis's messaging was a bit off, and a lot of Trump's supporters support the American history, where it includes everyone, the contribution of Italians, Irish, Jewish, um, the Eastern Europeans who migrated here, everyone who had to get away from the Nazi stuff. So we're a better nation united, and that's what we've done, Mike, if you will. We have presented our best case to the mayor that socialism is not the way. And let's teach the Constitution. Let's get civics back into the schools. Push back against the indoctrination of our boys and girls. And the last part is for him to open the door to Republican support for Newark, because you can't govern a city like Newark with a one-party system. That's what we're opening. We're excavating a path of common sense for him to fix our schools, and if necessary, we're gonna replace this current establishment with faith and freedom candidates, like what Steph was suggesting. We have to get people to pay attention to, that it's going to be us, we the citizens, we the people, that are going to have to change this legislature and take on the issues, own the issues, which ultimately affect our quality of life.
Yeah, and I'm going to go to Steph now, and then I'm going to bring it around the horn. One thing I'd like to mention is that the Black American family still fills their churches more so than any other group in this country. And there's a variety, you can leave it to your own mind. There's a variety of reasons why, because of their journey. They had to believe very strongly that there was a divine intervention that could bring them out of the shackles, bring them out of a circumstance, and make them part of the community. They still fill their churches and continue to fill their churches. And they are also one of the largest.
Part of that, Mike, what I told the mayor Razbaraga, because I play softball with his brother in the summertime when we play against the police department. We play in a charity game. Yes. I asked the brother, I said, why would he knock down the Italians' Columbus statue? I told him, I said, my baseball coaches, that's something that they rally around. Now, if you took that away from them, at least give them an Italian-American museum in Newark, so that they'll have something to galvanize around. But he was influenced by the other Democrat handlers, and I told his brother, I said, we have to, them making a statement that they want to push away cultures that have had a huge deposit in Newark. I'm like, I've tried to suggest him a way to re-strategize that relationship and the things that he wants to say as far as messaging. But that's where I was with that. And some of my other mentors around Jersey who used to live here, they're like, Shay, we understand that he got caught up into the national narrative, but that wasn't the way to go about that. He could have brought us back in for a weekend and said, how do we highlight Italian history and their relationship to the city of Newark? Because when most of the blacks were moving here from the South, this was a town governed by Hugh Adenizio was the mayor.
Hugh Adenizio, absolutely.
And he had factory jobs. He had an economic boom here. The school system had some problems, but that wasn't on. I'm not putting that on that was more other state stuff with the state of New Jersey. But there's a whole wealth of history here that's untold. And they limited it to, unfortunately, disrespecting their statue. And I've been telling the mayor's brother, you built a Harriet Tubman Park where the statue was, and I get that. Okay, I'm a Harriet Tubman fan too, but we need to
Right.
give our Italian brothers who are part of Newark at least a an Italian heritage museum or something as a trade-off. You don't push down another culture just to for national to play into their national Democrat narrative. I thought that was in bad taste, Mr.
Jay, you're
Amato.
going to have to run for mayor.
Yeah, you
It
do
might
a
take
great
that.
job. You'd be do a great job of that. Listen, I want to segue over to an Italian lady here, Luca. So, men and women's sports. I'll start that way. Really, no. I'd like your take. But what's going on? You're a New York lady. What is going on in the school systems there regarding this whole transgender socializing information? And what's the blowback? This is the greatest city in the world, even today, although it's taken a step back. What is your opinion?
Well, I, of course, believe that Title IX was created to protect women in sports. And I think that transgender, being a specialized class of people, is in contradiction to what Title IX was set out to do 50 years ago. And we didn't celebrate it loudly and proudly enough. Unfortunately, a lot of women don't go into sports in college. They figure after high school. I have friends who played softball in high school. By the time they went to college, they just want to enjoy college and just have a college experience. So when Title IX was created, it had that whole percentage. So what happened over time is that we had less men's sports because of the percentage that had to be men to women in enrollment had to balance in their sports. And because you had women not playing sports through college, then you had and came into college in higher numbers, then you had to balance it out. So it didn't work out as well as it was intended, but women have surpassed the goals of what Title IX had set out to do overall. So the law did have the positive effect that it was intended. In New York City, it's hard to really grasp. I don't have children in the school system, so it's hard to grasp what's going on in sports. But the cultures of people in New York are blended, and none of them believe that men should play in sports with women. And we see it across the country, but in New York, we're not vocal enough. We need parents to understand that being at school board meetings, running for school board, and having more of a voice within the school system is imperative, as it is with elections, as it is with every issue. Our voices have been taken away from us, and we need to find a way to bring it back, whether it's through the church or through community groups or through civic organizations such as Project Civica. We do need to help people have a voice and bring that forward. But that's part of the platform moving forward, especially for schools and giving children an equal education. And I think that there needs to be a greater discussion as to whether the school, the way it's formatted, whether it's really truly helping children learn. Because there are many children with different cultures that they have language in the home and then they don't have it at school. And the length of the school day, the length of time children are out of the home during the day has an impact on them emotionally. And then you're inviting teachers to have conversations with children about sexuality and what is your name and how do you identify. So you're taking advantage of vulnerable children outside of the home who are not with their parents as much as they're in school. If you think about the length of the day is 24 hours, they sleep for maybe 7-8 hours. They're in school 7-8 hours. How much time are they spending with their parents? There's very little time left. And there's no longer the family meal, which I grew up with, which, it's tradition. That's how you transcend from generation to generation the morals and the norms that you want to pass on to your children. You're running to sports, or there's another event, or you have a work event, you need another babysitter. So life has gotten busier. But all of that is a distraction from the common goal of the family. So getting back toward children and what they need, in New York, what's happening on the ballot this year, which is really alarming for us. It's framed as an equal rights amendment. So they're trying to codify what has been passed in the Senate and the Assembly here. They're trying to codify that persons of any age should be able to decide for themselves if they need an abortion or if they want to become transgendered. So I don't have the specific language in front of me, but the alarm is that the parents are losing their rights. We don't need any law that would establish a parental right. Parents inherently have rights.
That's
They
right.
have children, they are their children, the way we have rights inherently from God. We don't need government to tell us what we can and cannot do. The Bill of Rights is a limit on what the government is allowed to do. And re-educating people in civics and in the Constitution and what the Bill of Rights actually are meant to do, how the 14th Amendment has been used just this year erroneously in trying to indict certain individuals. That's not what it was intended for. And the 14th Amendment being used for anchor babies across the country for decades now has
Right.
changed the face of the country. And it's a deterioration over time, along with messaging over time that people take into consideration. We want to talk about Ron DeSantis not messaging his bill correctly. Knowing that you're going to have mass media across the country at every level coming at you for a word, one simple word that you say incorrectly. When you're rolling out an education program or an election program or whatever program it is, that you make sure that every word is not taken away from you and reframed. And that's what happens with a lot of civic organizations and a lot of election integrity groups, that what we say is reframed inappropriately and then it takes on a life of itself. So we have to be responsible in using the correct messaging when we talk with people about getting out to vote. Oh, what does it matter? It does matter.
Yeah.
And giving people the hope and the incentive, that the inspiration that when they do move forward with an initiative, whether it's within the school system or in an election system or running for office, that they're putting together a platform for themselves that really does transcend through the community and speak to the community, regardless of how people in the media want to talk about it. I'm
Right.
sorry, I think I went in kind of a wrong way. Sorry.
That's okay. That's fine. We're running over some time, but I'm letting it go because it's an interesting talk. But you know that the Governor Newsom just signed a law that was very controversial in California, that a state assemblyman had drawn and proposed about a year ago, which permits, it's called the 10-year law, and the 10-year expansion between, in other words, what they can do now is, from this law being signed, it's signed, is that 14 years old is the limit. 14-year-old young girl or boy can now have sex or be involved in a sexual encounter, as the law is written, in 10 years. In other words, not beyond 24, between 24 and 14, and that person will now not be listed on a registry for a pedophilia or some other form of
Sex crime, right.
Now that's 10 years. Now we know that a 14-year-old young lady or boy is not prepared in most cases, I'm not saying in the huge big picture of life, for a 20-year-old man or woman to engage them in maybe a forced sexual relationship, or one that they're creating that they believe is consensual. And this is what's going on. Is this a drift from morality? Is it a
Yes.
drift from, yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
You can comment.
It's codifying pedophilia.
Mm.
It is codifying sex trafficking.
Mm.
Because you as a 14-year-old are not allowed to sign contracts without a parent or a guardian. But
Yeah.
you're allowed to engage in sexual relations with someone. This was for years, I forget the crime that they label it as, but this is codifying and allowing pedophilia, normalizing pedophilia and sex trafficking. Because how is it now, if you're with one person and they pass you to another, it opens the door to so much more that deviant lifestyle and down the rabbit hole of everything else that an emotionally unstable person, when you're too young and experience even seeing a crime happen in front of your face, when you're so young you don't know how to interpret it, like a transgender story hour, when you're 2 years old you don't know what this means, and then you internalize it in some way, so that when you grow up you don't know how to cope with it and explain it. If you see certain things happening in your household, you don't know how to internalize it and speak about it later on. And there are many holistic doctors that talk about the pains that people carry through their lifetime just from family drama, your pain in the back, or an eating disorder, certain
Right.
things like
Absolutely.
this,
That's
all
absolutely
tied to those young experiences. So now we're allowing by law more of those traumatic experiences for young people to try to overcome. So
Well,
elections do have consequences.
when I grew up, as most did in communities, in our community here in New Jersey, although I was born in New York, I came over here when I was only 4, so it was really New Jersey. But we knew in those communities what ages we were supposed to be engaging with other ages. We knew automatically. And we also knew in our communities that if a young girl that was 14-year-old was approached by an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old or a 22-year-old or a 24-year-old, in those communities, in these communities, that guy wouldn't see the light of day the next day.
No.
The family would take it into their own hands to deal with this kid, or bring the police in and deal with the kid. It would be done. We knew the boundaries of this, and we knew very easily, young ladies, 14, 15, 16, they grow up very quickly, even back then in society. And when we were 18 and 20, they did look attractive to us, but we knew we would get an elbow saying, too young, move on. Okay? Yep. This was natural. We didn't even have to think about it. We go, oh yeah, right. And then we'd move on.
But that was the neighborhood. That's when everybody knew everybody. You knew
everybody
who was
knew
down the
everybody.
block. Even
You
if
wouldn't
somebody
step
moved
over
into
that
the
line.
neighborhood, you knew.
Right.
But we don't have neighborhood communities anymore.
Right.
That's when you had morality too. Okay.
And respect.
Yes.
We had respect.
Morality doesn't exist anymore, really.
So let me segue for a minute because it's getting late now. We pulled it over until a little more time, and we're going to do quite a bit of editing in this. And then when we're finished with it, we're going to blast it out. We've got a couple things. We lost our power a little bit, which happens sometimes. So be that as it may, the last segment, and then I'll just get a comment from everybody at the end. The last segment showed what has happened in our society regarding our police and the disrespect that they've received. The last segment showed a breach on the 3rd precinct in Minnesota, Minneapolis, that had been manifested after the George Floyd affair, the situation where George had succumbed during a police arrest. So I want to ask both Edward, and Ralph what their feelings on seeing a police department breached, but then again, the police department were not being backed up by the city officials, or they were not being helped. They basically let the police precinct burn down under a riot and under people that were basically breaking the law. So I'm going to start with Ed first and give his opinion on that.
It's we have a rule of law, and when I can remember as a young man getting in trouble in school because I got caught smoking in the bathroom or something, so I got called down to the principal's office, and I had to do some detention or whatever for that. So I was, we learned that on pretty early on, and this breakdown in society of these these instant riots where all of a sudden people get together and they have, I forget what they call them, and they're all in like a shopping center and they all start looting and pushing and shoving and fighting people. I forget what they call that, some special way that they do it now, but it's all related. Now, you know, to go into fisticuffs against the police is really, it's you know, the police are there to be our protectors of our liberties, you know, and that's what we hire them for. So, you know, for the Minneapolis you know, elected to just let them not use the force that was necessary to contain this riot, it's just it baffles me. I mean, we saw the same thing in New York with Antifa. We saw the same thing in New York with the Black Lives Matter. We were at the Trump Towers when we were out there, right? And then we had instigations with the Black Lives Matter. Right here in New Jersey, we had a I forgot what it was, what we were doing, but all of a sudden Black Lives Matter showed up and they're going toe to toe and just disregarding everybody, just disregarding everybody's rights. You know, everybody's as if they are the ultimate.
Well, they blocked all the traffic on.
Well, they blocked the traffic in Englewood that time, right, when they had the housing.
On 9W and on Sylvan Street, right?
That's another incident too, when they had the housing thing going on, the affordable housing in Englewood Cliffs, and the thing is that they just get away with it, and our administrators don't do anything about it. They just allow it to happen, you know. And I don't, you know, I'd hate to have to be the mayor to have to make that call, but somebody has to make the call. You know, what happens to just our basic, you know, our basic protections. So I don't know what more you can say about it. It's just a travesty. It's a travesty that we have to have this type of instigation going on in our country, and this is it's all part. It goes all the way back to the Middle East when they had the color. What do they call it? The color. Right. Well, yeah. You know, and it's just the communist way of doing things. You know, they just constantly overwhelm they overwhelm the system and they break it down slowly but surely. It's the same, and now it's going on in our school system. So it's sad that we just have to wrestle. We have to wrestle it back. We can't let it. We just can't sit by and do nothing. And you know, obviously,
well, we're gonna have Ed. We're gonna have Jimmy. We're gonna have Jimmy from Brooklyn back on. We had him on twice. And he knows. He's like a professor at the whole evolution of Marxism and communism, how it evolved here. So, Ralph, let me have your opinion on what you saw about that riot in Minneapolis. By the way, I believe that Minneapolis police chief eventually resigned because she wasn't getting the backup from the mayor, that mayor who kept walking away, and they kept sending him home, if you recall. That young mayor, they kept saying, go home. This was the radical group, when the mayor went out to talk to them, who tried to coalesce with them, to try to make them feel as though he was on their side, that he could talk to them. They said, go home. They wanted a more radical. But basically, they seized the 3rd precinct and burnt it down, and the city did not defend the police. They allowed the facility to burn down. The riot was taking place. They didn't care. What is your gut feeling?
Well, with regards to the situation in New York City, with regards to the illegal and the attacks on the police, I believe that the police hierarchy, police administration, do not allow police officers to do their job and you know, fulfill their responsibility in the job. Let me give you a little story about my situation with regards to education. And I'll tie it into the police as well. Many years ago, there was a young man smoking a cigarette on the stairwell, and I saw the smoke, and I saw the cigarette, and I saw the student smoking, and I wrote it up. And The administrator came back to me and said, "Are you sure that kid was, did you see that boy smoking a cigarette?" I said, "Look, I saw it. Now I want you to do your job. Allow me to do, you allow me to do my job. Now you do your job. That kid should be suspended from school for doing that. That's the rule." Now, this is not what's happening with the police department right now. They're not allowing these police officers to do their job. Okay. And not only that, there aren't enough police to do the job.
Yep.
Just to give you a little example of Paramus. Paramus has 4 or 5 major shopping malls, and we have only 96 police officers, and many of them are used to fulfill their duties at the malls. I was at a meeting the other day and asked one of the captains, I said, "How many police do you have to date?" Because 7 years ago, I was a police commissioner in town. In those days, we had about 110 police. He said, "We have 96." I said, 96? I said, you need at least 10 more police officers to fill the ranks, similar to what we had 7 or 8 years ago. I said, you're having all of these people come back to do overtime. It's costing you more money in overtime. This is what's going on in the major cities today. Police are needed. They won't hire them on for whatever reason. No doubt it's has to do with dollars and budgets. But the other reason, of course, is politics. They just don't know what they actually need to do the job in the police department in the city of New York and what other city here, wherever we're talking in the United States. I'm talking Paramus, New Jersey. We don't have enough cops. New York City absolutely doesn't have enough cops. And even with what they have, they still will not allow them to do their job. That's what you see now with this riot that you saw with regards to these 2 police officers. They were subjected to terrible, terrible. I can't even describe it. It was awful.
It was a
awful.
beating. They were beat. They were beaten.
Right. It was a beat down. That's exactly right.
Beat down.
And
Now, many, Ralph, some of these cities, these left cities, not all of them, but some of them have even suggested and proposed to their council to remove the entire police department and put in what they call social worker officers, which are considered peacemakers that can arrive on the scene. Can you imagine a domestic squabble where there's a firearm and this guy is hot and heavy in his head about his girlfriend or his wife maybe cheating on him or taking his money, or there's some squabble over the kids, they're pushing each other's buttons, someone's had something to drink, and a social worker is going to walk in and calm these people down?
I'm going to tell you another quick story. I did some one-on-one teaching after school for children that were suspended for the year. And my job was to give them at least the basic education so that they can move them along in the system. One night, I saw a parent on a stoop crying. I was there to teach that boy his lessons. I said to the mother, I said, "Well, what's going on?" She said, "My son is in there. He hit the mother." Okay.
Yeah.
And what had happened was he not only hit the mother, but he had an axe in his room. And I said to the mother, "Did you get the police involved here immediately?" I said, "Because I have to leave now. I have to go. You get the police here, have him arrested for what he's doing." And I was told, "Don't ever report back to that home again." Okay. This is what's going on. The parents have very little control over crazy kids and people, and schools, police departments, and so-called psychologists don't know how to deal with the situation either. I don't know what to tell you. It's how do you raise your kids today? That's probably the most important point. How do you raise your kids today? That parent was beat up by her son. Somewhere along the line, responsibility lies with the parent probably there. And I don't know what that was, but this is a big part of the problem. Parental responsibility, and in the case of my situation, school responsibility, and in that case, police responsibility.
Right.
And the politicians prevent that from being solved.
Right.
And that's where we are.
Right, right. Okay, so we're going to wind it down now. It's getting a little late. We went over about a half hour. So I'm going to go around here and get what I call a last word from everyone. We'll make it short, maybe a minute, maybe 2 minutes. A sum up of what we've seen. We covered a lot of turf. We had at least 6 rollouts, 7 rollouts of different issues. We had energy. We had beat down on police. We had riots. We had transgender reading groups in schools. We covered the whole, as much as we could in this show. We covered quite a bit, actually, of what's been going on and what has been accelerated in the last 3 years. So I'm going to go back to Ralph. Give me a sum up, Ralph, of what you know and what you think, in a simple terms, is the solution.
Solution is to elect Donald Trump president of the United States. That's where and we have to not only elect him, but you need to have Republican control over the Senate and the House of Representatives. That's where you start, and that's where it is. As I see it, that's where it is.
Steph, we're going to go to the young lady, I'll call her, from the Bronx, the toughest borough in Manhattan.
And Jimmy from Brooklyn may have a few choice words about that. But to add to how we vote at the top of the ticket this year, because many states will all have the presidential election, and some states will have a U.S. senator race. Yeah. And then we have all of our congressional seats, and then we have our state assembly and senates. So we have to make sure that we get out to vote. I know for New York, April 2nd is a presidential primary. June 25th is our congressional races and the U.S. Senate, and Assembly for the state. And then November 5th is the general election date. I go over this so that I remind people to mark their calendars, as that's election day. Please make sure you get out to vote. Join a local civic organization, projectcivica.org. If you're in New York, we have several initiatives that you can visit our website to see, projectcivica.org. One of which is making sure that people are trained to be poll workers and poll watchers, so that I think it's over 14,000 polling locations across New York State need people there to work. We have the issue of registered Democrats changing their party line the morning of so that they can work as the overseer for the Republican Party. So we need people to give their time in a civic action and take part in the election process in some way, and contact us at projectcivica.org to get involved in New York. Thank you.
They can contact you at that email or that website, and you will get back to them on.
Absolutely.
Great, super. And where can they contact you, Ralph?
Who is Jimmy?
Jimmy from Brooklyn.
Okay.
Jimmy from Brooklyn.
I figured that's who you meant. Okay.
Yeah, we've had him on. I'm going to bring him on again, and we've had him out actually. And he's a great icon and a folk hero in a way. And he goes back to the days of Bob Grant. Bob Grant used to have him on the show quite often. So he's an interesting guy and very learned about the communist.
Right. He was the fellow that talked about Marxism and communism. Right.
Yes, he did.
I know who Jimmy is now.
Jimmy from Brooklyn. So do you have a contact number where anybody can reach you, Ralph, or do you want to just anything where if there's a question from some of our viewing audience, they might want to reach out to you?
My phone number is 201-370-9557. You could reach me at any time on my cell phone. I'm also a real estate broker. You want to call me? Call me.
Call him and get the real estate sold with Ralph. Give me your phone number again, Ralph.
201-370-9557.
And where's your office? In Paramus?
Well, I'm basically semi-retired now.
Okay.
My license is hanging in another broker's office along with my partners. Right. But I'm here to help with any problem they may have in the real estate line and in life's line. Okay, I'm here to help.
Awesome.
Thank God. And when are we gonna vote for you for county freeholder? Are we planning to see you run for that position?
Never. My
Never?
job is with the church. I'm a Eucharistic minister. That's
Oh,
where I
like
belong.
Ed. Ed is the same.
That's where I belong.
Wow, that's
We all
fantastic.
have our own purpose. That's
Listen,
great.
we're going to bring you on the show again. You did a terrific job so far. Ed Durfee, last word, the famous Ed Durfee from Northvale and that area. He is also a Eucharist minister, and he is engaged in every great organization. Ed, what's the last word on the country? Is there a solution? Can we come back?
Well, I have to agree with what Ralph said that that Trump represents most of the people that are real in this country, and hopefully we can inspire everybody to come out and vote for him, and also up and down the ticket to Jersey's a lost cause, but I think it's possible that we could have.
Shaking your head, no, it's not a lost cause.
No, I don't mean a lost cause that we won't vote for Trump. I mean just overall because we have so many Democratic. It's not this year. We have to wait till next year to flip our state so we can get a good governor. And but right now it's we're not. We can't. Our laws are all written by Democrats and they're signed off by a Democratic mayor, Democratic governor. So I still believe in building up from county committee. As you know, I've been very, very focused on county committee. I've been able to flip our town over to red totally, and I'm just trying to do that in other towns here in the Northern Valley. So when I say Jersey's a lost cause, I don't mean it's lost in that sense. I just mean that this year we don't get a chance to vote for our Senate or for our Assembly.
But it goes back. It goes back to the organization that you founded, the Bergen County for Liberty. I came aboard in 2011, but Ed founded that for a specific reason, to focus in on the Constitution and also to get local people involved, grassroots people, and it's working. We've flipped a lot of council seats. We flipped a lot of mayoral seats. I think 60% we have, or 70% in Bergen County. We've done a lot of flipping in those areas, which is good, and a lot of Board of Educations. We flipped into majorities in the way in which we're thinking. So your idea of grassroots is where it's happening, is it not?
Yeah. Mike, I just saw flipping through my screen here. My phone number is not 371, but 370.
Would you repeat that again 3 times?
201-370-9557. I saw 371 flip by.
All right, everyone in TV land, you now have the right number. Make sure you call him. If you got a prospect to sell something, get it over to Ralph, and he'll also give you some advice on government.
On life.
On life government. And the last we have is Che. Is he with us still? Let's see. I see his avatar there, but I don't know.
As long as we're saying, I mean, you might as well put up Bergen County, New Jersey for Liberty. We have a meetup group, meetup.com. If you want to get some more information and get connected.
You can put that up. We'll let Larry put that up. He's putting it up now. And
we originally formed out of the Ron Paul movement. So
Ron Paul, that's right. We came on board, and I came on board.
Heard a lot of that tonight with the personal responsibility and
the budget
and
the budget. You know, when Ron ran, when Ron Paul ran in 2012, I think our deficit was sitting at about 18 trillion.
Yeah, I don't think it was that high. It wasn't even that high.
I don't think it was that high. I think, no, you're right. You're right. After Obama left, it was about 19 trillion to 20 trillion. And when Ron was around, it was about 14 trillion or 12 trillion, something in that area there. And he had said, once it gets past 24 trillion, you can't almost take it back.
We're done.
You know, so it's a mess. So we were fighters on that score. I don't know if Che is with us. I was hoping he could give a last
billion a day.
So we will see. We'll give him 1 second here. and see if he's still
He's
up.
down at the bottom, Mike. He's at the bottom. He's still with us. I don't know if he hears us.
But I don't know if he hears us. Okay. I'll give him another second here to come up and see if we can get him up. Maybe not. That's okay. Something technical probably happened. All right. Very good. Very good. Okay. So we're going to close the show now. We're going to have everybody back. We're going to do a lot of editing. We had some little technical issues here and there that we can edit. We'll package it. We'll get it out to you. Everyone who's watching can also come to the website, NoLimitUSA.us, NoLimitUSA.us. We also have pages on there. If you want to form a special page, we'll give you a page there where you can put your own articles on the page, photos, whatever you like. You'll just contact my phone number at 201-233-4700, 201-233-4700. We'll get you set up on there and get your own page if you want. No cost to you. You can just put information there. We have our own advertisers that we have on the internet. So, Stephanie Luca, thanks very much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mike.
Ralph.
Gentlemen, great to meet you.
Oh, terrific to meet you. We're going to bring you back. Ralph Amata, thanks very much for being here tonight. You really added to the wisdom of this program tonight. You gave us a tremendous lesson.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Edward
Stephanie,
Durfee.
nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you too.
Edward Durfee, who I've known a long time. I don't have to say goodbye. I'll see him again very soon. My running mate in 2001 in the 37th district. And I'll say it again. In a district that was held by Democrats since 1972, we did 52% more votes than any Republican in 30 years because we worked our butt off pretty much, right? Yeah. So Ed's great. And do you have any contact place that people could call you or email you or talk to you about any questions tonight? You're obviously the municipal chair up there.
Well, yeah, I guess the easiest would just be just go to edward@durfee.us.
Okay, edward@durfee.us.
Yeah.
And I'll speak with Che. I'll speak for Che. We can't seem to get him up, or maybe he's just indisposed. But Che will be in touch with us. He'll be on the show again. I'd like to bring him on when I have the minister from Chicago, Minister Laurie. He is a magnificent person. I likened him almost to like a Martin Luther King when you hear him talk. And he's really solid and stable, and he's coming from the truth. He's an amazing guy trying to help the Black community in Chicago not be taken advantage by the administration there. So it's great. So we loved having you all on tonight, and we'll see you next time. We have a special, as we're leaving, we're going to, if you want to hang out and just listen, we're going to bring, every week we're going to have a special artist, because I'm in music also. And tonight we're going to feature the great Tina Turner.
Oh,
fantastic. You're simply the best. So that's the song going out. We're ready to go. See you next time.
Ed, nice meeting you.
Likewise, Ralph.
Thank you.
We met at the beefsteak at the council. I don't know if you recall.
I'll probably see you on Saturday as well.
All right, roger that.
At the rally.
Right.
All right, nice meeting you, Steph.
Nice to meet you all. Good night, gentlemen.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
Steph.